Hi, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're not new, then welcome back. I am so excited to be covering this. This story has been part of my life for as long as I remember. Growing up in the church, the story of Moses was everywhere. To me, Moses' journey is all about having faith in something bigger than yourself and how important it is to have that leadership and belief in what you're doing. And in 1998, DreamWorks took that story and turned it into a cinematic masterpiece. Today, we are going to look at that film and its musical adaptation. We're going to talk about the details between the miracles and the psychological toll this journey takes on everyone involved. And today, I'm not going to be talking about the book of Exodus or get into its historical biblical accuracies. Instead, we're going to analyze the generational curses, the weight of advocacy, the representation of the women in Moses and Rameses' story, and the brotherly bond between Moses and Rameses, and so much more. So let's not waste any time. Let's talk about the Prince of Egypt. What an intro! The show opens with Deliver Us, and right away it's clear that the ensemble are the most important part of this show. Similar to Hamilton, they aren't just background characters here. They are active parts of the story. The way their choreography is perfectly synced with the sound of the whips is so intentional because it forces you to look at the shared pain of everyone on that stage. It's not just one person's struggle, it's the collective agony that sets the tone for the rest of the musical. What's so real about the song is the miserable nature of the slaves. For me, this immediately brings to mind Black American history. Just like the spirituals and hymns that got people through generations of trauma, these characters are using music as a survival tool. They are singing through the sorrow, crying out to a God that they feel like isn't listening to them. They're asking how a God who promised them their promised land could let them experience something so cruel. Then we begin to see the story of Moses' family. It's not just Yocheved trying to save her baby. It's Miriam and Aaron right there with her. They are a unit. When his mother puts him in the basket, she's making the ultimate sacrifice. She's choosing the hope that a life where she never sees him again is better than him being dead or being a slave in Egypt. Her prayer to the river is a desperate request for hope when she has nothing else left. And as Miriam stalks Moses and that basket down the river, it highlights that theme of family faith. They aren't just trusting a higher power. They're trusting each other to keep this secret and this child alive. The moment that Moses is found by the queen, she has immediate sympathy for the Hebrew baby, even though she is told directly that the child is Hebrew. There's a beautiful duality in the naming of the baby. In the musical version, the queen names Moses, or is given the name by Miriam because he has been delivered to her through the Nile. In the queen's eyes, adopting this Hebrew child is freedom from experiencing slavery and ever knowing about their history. But for Miriam and the Hebrews, deliverance is a prophecy that was placed on him. They are looking at this baby as the one who will eventually deliver them out of slavery. It's two completely different versions of the same word, and in a way, they both involve freedom. When Miriam whispers, "Brother, you're safe now, and safe's where you stay," you realize the entire weight of people's freedoms is being placed on the shoulders of a baby in a basket. The story fast forwards through the years, and that baby in a basket is now a prince who has absolutely no idea about the weight that he's carrying. This brings us to the song Faster. This song is all about establishing the bond between Moses and Rameses. They aren't just these stiff historical figures standing on pedestals. They are brothers. The brotherly feud here is so fun, both in the musical and the movie, because it feels like a real relationship. They're egging each other on, they're trash talking, and they're just being reckless young men who think that they're invincible. And the ensemble is back at it again. I love how in this song, the ensemble actually acts as the horses for the chariot, which is such a smart choice because it's very likely that these chariots were built on the backs of people that we saw in the opening. The ensemble are constantly playing as the slaves, as the wind, as the water, and so many other elements that we're going to continue to talk about in this video. But this song is also where we begin to see the cracks in the two of their personalities. Moses is extra reckless. He's the one pushing the limits, causing the chaos, and he never has to look back at the damages that he causes. Moses is the silly brother. He has no responsibility, so he can afford to be messy. He can afford to be silly. Rameses, on the other hand, is notably more weaker and timid in this adaptation. While Moses is laughing and he's kikiing, Rameses is the one who actually, like I said, has to face the consequences because he is the firstborn and technically the only born son of Egypt. Rameses is the one who has to answer for all of the royal promises and the next round of trouble that Moses begins to stir up. And that trouble that they begin to stir up leads us into the song 1 Week Blink. Now, if you thought the Pharaoh Seti was stern in the movie, he is far more verbally aggressive here. And we really start to see the psychological harm and the generational curse that he's placing on his sons, particularly onto Rameses. The central metaphor in the song One Weak Link is that the dynasty is a chain, and Seti tells Rameses point blank, 1 weak link can break the strongest chain. This song in the scene allows us to, again, see that contrast between the two brothers. Rameses is confused. He's under a lot of pressure, and you can see him physically falling apart and running away at those consequences and that pressure that he has to have eventually when he becomes pharaoh. Rameses here isn't the stubborn villain that we know he becomes later in the plagues. Moses, on the other hand, his silly and goofy personality actually becomes a source of comfort for his brother. This brotherly bond is elevated so much here in the musical because you see that they are each other's only support system. They make each other laugh when the other is stressed, and it's actually very heartbreaking because you can already see here how Moses is the only reason Rameses is holding it together. After Moses speaks to Seti, suggesting that he should actually be given some sort of responsibility so he can begin to step into that role, Moses actually begins to reflect on himself, and he sings the song Footprints in the Sand. Footprints on the sand. Footprints on the sand. Not in sand. Footprints can't be in sand. He realizes that as the second son, the spare prince, he isn't really tied to any responsibilities. He can do whatever he wants. He has the luxury to just enjoy life. But he starts to worry if he actually wants that. He starts to worry if he'll actually make a mark on history other than just being Ramesses' brother. There is a massive irony here because Moses compares himself to humble slaves who won't make a mark on the world, saying he isn't like them. Little does he know he is one of them. He's trying to relate to their invisibility while living in the peak of Egyptian luxury. Moses compares his life to footprints on the sand, and this is going to become a recurring theme throughout the rest of the musical. If you haven't been in a desert lately, it is an interesting metaphor because footprints in sand disappear almost immediately. He feels like his existence is fleeting and essentially worthless because he isn't etched in stone like the pharaohs before him. He's searching for meaning while his brother is currently being crushed by the pressure of the crown. Following Moses' reflection, we get into the song Seti's Return, where he's returning from his war with the Midianites, and the song Dance to the Day. We get the introduction of Zipporah, where she is the Midian girl that they captured and had brought in. She is a gift for Rameses, which is a very weird, uncomfortable dynamic because we already know that Rameses is engaged up until this point. But instead of being feisty like she is in the movie, this musical version gives Zipporah so much more agency through her movement and through her song. She uses dance as a form of rebellion. She isn't dancing for their pleasure. She's dancing because she knows that if she doesn't, she'll be harmed. In the second half of the song, after she is done performing for them, she is literally mocking them to their faces. She's telling these powerful men and women that she's put a mark on their swollen pride if they enjoyed the dance that she did for them, and that their entire kingdom is eventually going to crumble. While the court is laughing at her and humiliating her, you can see this hint of disappointment when he looks at her and then looks at his own mother. He's starting to feel the weight of these cruel traditions that he's inherited when he sees Zipporah being taken away or taken to his bedchambers. In the musicals, when she escapes, Rameses actually thinks that Moses stole her out of jealousy and orders him to bring her back. Even their interactions with women are seen with status and competition. As Moses goes after her, strictly to stay loyal to Rameses, he runs into Miriam. Miriam, who is now older, is so overjoyed to see him that she steps out of line, she touches him, she speaks to him, and even though Aaron, her brother, is there telling her to calm down, to stop, she still does so anyways. Moses insults her, calling her a slave. It even gets physical. He smacks Miriam and puts her to the ground. And it isn't until she starts singing that something finally clicks in Moses' head. Once Miriam starts singing, it triggers a memory that Moses didn't even know he had. He's essentially being forced to face the fact that Miriam might be right, that he is her brother. He is Hebrew, and he's supposed to be the one to set them all free. This leads us to the song All I Ever Wanted with the Queen's reprise. This song is the culmination of the doubt that we kind of saw in Footprints in the Sand. Moses is spiraling. He's trying to convince himself and trying to convince us as the audience that his life is perfect. He's part of this grand history. You can begin to see that doubt creeping in, even if he's trying to gaslight himself. He's desperately trying to convince himself that he is the second son. He is a prince of Egypt, and everything that he has, everything that he's surrounded by is exactly what he wants. That anyone suggesting otherwise is wrong. Then we get the nightmare of the hieroglyphics, and I don't mean to smile because it is very terrible. In the film, this is my favorite scene, not because of the context. I think child murder is wrong, but I just love how it is stylized. I love how Moses is there with his people experiencing that nightmare. But the musical reenacts the opener of the children being murdered directly as they did in the opener. Moses is seeing the vision of his people and history of how they are maintaining their power over the Hebrews. And he is absolutely horrified to see that Seti has murdered this many people just to keep a legacy alive. Now, one of the most powerful lines from the movie actually didn't make it into the musical. It's the line where Seti says they were only slaves. When Seti says that, you can see the regret and just the feeling of dread hit Moses. It is such a harsh, sickening line because it's the moment that Moses realized that his father's greatness is built on the murder and dehumanization of his own family. I really think that this line should have been kept. Seti tells Moses that sometimes one must do things, makes a bitter choice that scars your soul. It's such heavy foreshadowing because later on, Moses is going to have that exact same reflection when he's the one acting as the messenger for God. In that stress, Moses runs to the Nile, realizing that that's where he was found in the basket just to get some air. And the story focuses on his mother, Tuya, and her plea for Moses to just forget the truth. She sings to him about being blessed and grateful, essentially telling him this only option for safety is to stay in the dark about all of this. By the end of this, Moses is walking through the conditions of the slaves and finally seeing them for what they are. People in pain, people being abused, people being taken advantage of. He understands that in any other life, he would be the one under the whip instead of the one holding the power. He's so overwhelmed by this realization that when he sees a guard attacking a slave, he reaches his breaking point and accidentally kills the guard. Now we have someone who can no longer ignore the blood on the walls or the pain of the people he used to walk over. And in this moment, he is distraught because he has murdered a man in front of so many people. He's committed a crime. So he runs off to the edge of Egypt and Rameses catches up with him. Moses is distraught. He's upset. He's like, I can't change the past. I can't change what I am. And Rameses tells him that we can make it right. As he sings, make it right. This song really solidified the tragedy of their relationship to me. Like after I heard the song and really understood that this musical is trying to strengthen and develop their relationship, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta make a video on this. Here, like I said, Rameses is trying to convince Moses to stay by telling him that they can brush it to the side. They can cover it up. They are Egypt. They can declare whatever they want. Rameses is desperate in this song. And the thing is, his desperation isn't just about Moses' safety. It is about him. It is about his own safety, his own mental health. Rameses knows that without Moses, he has to take all of the pressure of being Pharaoh by himself. He won't have that brotherly support system anymore. And Rameses is terrified. Rameses literally begs to him, I will make it right. I will find a way to fix this. He's promising that as a Pharaoh's son, he can change the laws and keep Moses' secret. He's offering to use his power to wash away Moses' guilt, but Moses can't let that happen. He tells Rameses that he can't live with these feelings among all of these people. He can't just fix the fact that he now sees the humanity in the people Egypt is crushing. Rameses is offering Moses everything. Power, safety, a future, the things that he has had his entire life. But he's doing it because he's scared of becoming the cruel man that his father wants him to be. And that's the irony. By Moses leaving to escape from the truth, he leaves Rameses behind to be that cold, hardened leader that we see later in the story. As Moses leaves Rameses, he is in the desert. And if you thought the ensemble was impressive up until this point, this is absolutely amazing. They aren't just people anymore. The ensemble is the desert, the tumbleweeds, the shifting sand, and every single obstacle that Moses has to conquer. And at this point, Moses does not want to be found. He's essentially trying to bury himself in the sand so he doesn't have to live with his actions or the pressure of being the chosen one and the fact that he was told he's meant to set his people free. He's so desperate to avoid that reality that he literally invites the wind to end him, begging for it to take him away just so he can stop existing in this middle ground between his old life and his true identity. The choreography here is so strong because it uses interpretive dancing to represent the environment. The ensemble, again, acting as the tumbleweeds, acting as the wind, physically tears apart Moses' royal clothes until he is ripped of every remaining piece of his Egyptian life. By the end of the song, he's no longer a prince. He's just a starving, dehydrated man in the sand, completely broken down until there's nothing left of the man he thought he was. As the sand clears, Moses helps Midian high priestess' daughters. He ends up falling into a well. When he is eventually rescued from the well after assisting to stand up for the daughters, they are brought in. There's a celebration done for him, and the high priest Jethro begins to give a speech and sings the song Through Heaven's Eyes. This is one of the only songs that remained unchanged from the original film, and for good reason. It's the heart of Moses' transformation. After being stripped of his title and his royal robes, Moses is actually celebrated here and thanked for the first time in his life. Not for being a prince, but for being a human who just did something kind. In Jethro's eyes, Moses let Zipporah go after she had been captured by the Egyptians. He stood up for his other daughters when they were being harassed by gentlemen who wanted water from the well. He is a kind, strong man, but Moses doesn't believe that. Jethro acts as a mentor. When Jethro tells Moses, it seems you do not know what is honor. It is such a targeted critique of everything Moses has learned in Egypt. In the palace, honor was about statues and legacies, but Jethro is teaching him that honor is found in the humble things, the work, the community, and how you treat the people around you. When the ensemble and the daughters come together for this big dance, they are amazing at making Midian feel like a living, breathing place of joy rather than a place on a map to Moses. This song is where Moses is able to finally find his confidence in who he actually is. Moses is no longer trying to leave a footprint in history. He's just living day in, day out, clocking in that 9 to 5 with the sheep. He's finally understanding what it means to be a man of honor. But while Moses is finding peace in the desert, the palace he left behind is starting to feel empty, and Rameses reflects on this with the reprise of Faster. It's really interesting that before the song begins, we actually saw the conversation where Pharaoh Seti and his wife considered actually going after Moses. In the film, Moses is just gone. But here we see the fallout of it. Rameses is helpless. He is hopeless. He's begging to go find his brother, but Seti shuts it down. Seti is doubling down on the expectations of the dynasty, essentially saying that he would put the kingdom first. He refuses to let the family be tainted by the scandal, knowing that they are engaged to Nefertiti, her family. This is also a big moment for Queen Tiera. She actually tries to step up and say that she will go to save him, but Seti shuts her down. He reminds her that she is a queen of Egypt and has a duty to perform. Once she's reminded of her place, she just sits down and goes silent. And we don't see her speak again till the plagues, I think, till the second act. Queen Tiera refuses to even answer Rameses when he is begging to her. They are choosing to save face over saving their own son, and you can see the silence starting to rot the family from the inside out. The song itself deals with how quickly things have changed. Rameses is looking for Moses. He's reflecting on how they thought their bond would last forever, but they were just too young and stupid to realize that how fast time moves. This allows the show to pull off a really clever time jump. As the song continues, Moses joins in and he shows us his life in Midian. Moses has become a shepherd. He's fallen in love and he's finally found a purpose that doesn't involve a throne. There's a really sweet, humble irony in the way that he describes his new life. He's traded the palace life for one of a shepherd, and for the first time, he genuinely seems content. In this contentness, he has a reflection with Zipporah, where the two of them sing the song Never in a Million Years. It is such a sweet moment where the two of them finally get to reflect on everything that has happened between them. They're looking back on how they met under the most stressful and unexpected circumstances and realizing that they've built something real together. The core of the song is that love comes in ways that you can't predict. They both admit that they never would have imagined they'd end up together, let alone caring for each other this deeply. It's a shift from the palace life where everything was about status and duty. Here, it's just two people who have found each other in the desert, and it's the two of them confirming to each other that they will never stop loving each other and they'll never stop feeling that way about each other. It's a beautiful sign of how much Moses has changed. He's no longer looking for his footprint in the sand. He's found his home. And as he's found this home, he realizes that one of the sheep have gone off. And as the sheep goes off, we go into the Act 1 finale. It is a big reprise of Deliver Us and All I've Ever Wanted put together. So, a lot happens here. First, I'm going to talk about the burning bush. The burning bush, I think, is so much stronger in the musical because it isn't just a bush on fire that doesn't burn. It is the ensemble acting as the ancestors. They are the bush. Having God's voice come through the ensemble as this collective ancestral voice makes the miracle feel more in the history of the people rather than just a little event between Moses and God. Moses asks in the film, "Who am I to lead these people?" And honestly, that doubt is entirely fair. He spent his entire life representing the very people who held the whip against them, who brought them down, and he's rightfully struggling with whether he even has a right to lead them in the first place. After he speaks with God, is told his mission, told what he has to do, he explains it to Zipporah, and he begins to have her understand what freedom actually means. The kind of life her sisters and father have is what he wants to give to his own people. But Zipporah knows that he can't do it by himself. He needs her to be the person that he can lean on when doubt begins to come into him. And now while Moses is finding his purpose in the desert, we see Rameses find his purpose back in Egypt. Instead, he dies. And instead of getting a moment to actually grieve his father, Rameses is immediately surrounded by his mother and his new wife, Nefertiti, and the high priest. And they immediately remind him of his duty and the pressure that he has. He is now Pharaoh. Nick is not even in the ground yet. Both Rameses and Moses are told, this is why you are born, but they are being pushed towards completely opposite versions of destiny. They are both questioning if this vast responsibility or this strange new path is actually all they ever wanted. Is this actually their purpose for two men who were just years ago suddenly so lost and didn't know what they wanted to do going forward? When Moses is entering a life where he has to carry the weight of a people he never asked for, Rameses is entering a life of power he's starting to realize is just a different kind of prison. The act ends with Moses, Zipporah, and the entire ensemble surrounded by this literal ring of fire, symbolizing a point of no return. Their destinies are officially set, and they are about to divide the two of them forever. Act 2 opens with the songs Return to Egypt and Always on Your Side. And there is immediately a shift in Rameses' character. He has spent the last several years trying to preserve his father's legacy. He even named his son Seti II. And you can see how much he has hardened as a person. He has become serious, cold, and completely shackled by the crown. But the second Moses shows up, that completely changes. He can finally breathe again. This is where we get Rameses' declaration that he is the least free man on earth. He is essentially admitting that even though he is Pharaoh, he has zero agency. He's ashamed and he's lonely and he's so desperate to have his brother back that he tells Moses that being by his side is the only thing that makes him reasonable or capable of having any freedom. The exchange where Rameses says, "My wife would kill me," and Moses said, "Mine do even worse," always gets a laugh out of me. But it is important because they're both those silly, goofy brothers, but they're both married to very strong-willed women who don't fuck around. The thing is, Rameses is entirely willing to free the slaves just to have his brother back. He promises without hesitation because he values the bond of his brother over power. It's only after this promise that Moses finally calls him brother again after not seeing him for so long, which is a huge moment for Moses and where his priorities are. But the system is bigger than both of them. Rameses is very quickly overruled by Nefertiti and Hotep, and they remind him that his duty is to the dynasty, and that comes way before his love for his own brother. Now this hits both of them pretty hard. Moses realizes that he has to sacrifice his own freedom for the freedom of his people, and Rameses realizes that even with all the power in the world, he can't actually give his brother the one thing he's asking for. Moses delivers this news to the Hebrews that they are actually going to be set free. That spark of hope is what ignites the song Simcha. But before the celebration kicks off of them dancing together, we actually see how this hits Zipporah. She is devastated by the news at first. For her, it feels like Moses is sacrificing the promise that he made to her to return to Midian just to sacrifice himself for his people. It's a huge personal cost that often gets overlooked in the grander hero narrative of Moses trying to save his people. He's choosing his calling over the quiet life that they built together. Despite this, the scene lifts the spirits of the Hebrews through dancing. I love how the musical uses movement here. For the Hebrews, dancing was often the only way to express rebellion, celebration, and acceptance all at once. When you don't have a voice and you have no agency in the system, your body, your voice, your art often are the only tools you can use as a freedom of expression. The lyric, "Let the caged bird fly to the open sky," is such a direct way of saying that they are ready for a life without boundaries. It's such a beautiful moment of joy, but knowing what's coming next, it really is the calm before the storm. That joy is short-lived because the reality of their situation hits when it is announced that Rameses has doubled their workload of the Hebrews specifically because of Moses' interference. And Film Rameses says that he's going to make sure they know that if it's thanks to their God or thanks to you. Now the song Deliver Us, the second reprise, I really like. It's just, the ensemble begs Moses for mercy, but they aren't asking him to save him anymore. They are shaming him, pushing him aside and telling him to take his empty plans and go the fuck back to Midian. This song ends with the line, "Deliver us from you," which is such a clever reprise of the entire show's theme here. They've reached a point of such deep anger that they'd rather stay in the system they know than deal with the help that's making their lives a living hell. In the film, Moses is walking barefoot here. It's such a subtle but powerful way to show him trying to humble himself. He's literally standing on the same ground as the slaves, experiencing the same dirt, the same grit. But even that isn't enough to bridge the gap. The dialogue here is harsh because they tell him, worse, you gave us hope. And that hope was crueler than what the Egyptians had ever given us. Now, this is where the musical and film kind of change a little bit. In both versions, Aaron, Moses' brother, Aaron is the one who actually leads the song. Like, he's the one who takes charge in that aspect. But the way Miriam handles it is a little different. In the movie, she tells Aaron, you shame yourself. But in the musical, she's much more blunt, telling Aaron basically to shut up and not stand in Moses' way. Miriam in the movie is the one who gives the final push that Moses needs. She speaks directly to Moses about the reality of her life, that she's always been a slave and has never had her prayers answered till now. Her message is powerful, that God didn't put Moses through everything that he's been through just to abandon him now. So Moses can't turn around and abandon the Hebrews. Moses' reaction is much more aggressive in the musical. Instead of just being the humble, barefooted man that we see in the film, he is immediately furious because Rameses has broken his promise. Moses makes his declaration to Zipporah, to Aaron, to Miriam, they are my people. Whether they choose to accept me or not, I will fight for them. And it's a moment of just claiming his identity and his responsibility, even when it's being thrown back in his face by the very people he is trying to set free. Now, the next song, The Plagues, is my favorite in the whole show. Both the movie version and the musical. It's so good. And I have so much to say about it. I do think that the movie does a better job of showing all of those plagues. Obviously, because it is movie version, you can animate that a lot better than a stage version. You can't have fuck ton of frogs come up on stage. I mean, I'd love to see that. Both adaptations focus heavily on the guilt. Moses is not a prophet here. He's just a man forced to witness the suffering of the only family that he has ever known. Now, before we get into the literal blood and fire of the plagues, I want to talk about the song Playing with the Big Boys. Now, you may have noticed I didn't really mention it earlier. It's still important to mention the song Playing with the Big Boys because both here and in the plagues, we see that the high priests are trying to recreate God's miracles with smoke shows and magic tricks. In the movie version, they even try to bribe Moses in their lyrics. They tell him that he can be an acolyte and stay on their side if he just bows down to Pharaoh. They summon the two snakes in the movie, trying to conquer Moses' spirit and try to take advantage of the power that God is portraying through Moses. They are so caught up in their own spectacle and trying to impress all the people there that they completely miss Moses' snakes eat theirs. In the film, when we get to the Nile where Moses uses God's power and he turns the Nile to blood, I noticed that on my rewatch, Moses is the only one surrounded by clear water, but the musical uses the ensemble. They do this incredible interpretive dance to transform the river, literally tearing the clothes off of the guards and dyeing them red to represent the blood. Moses is making sure the Hebrews see this miracle too. They finally begin to believe in him, and Miriam is right there, reassuring everyone that God has finally extended his power. I didn't write down what the plagues are, but I thought I would share them before we continue. In case you do not know what the 10 plagues are in Egypt, it is blood, the Nile, and all the water is turned to blood, which kills a lot of the fish. There are frogs, where frogs infest the entire land, entering homes and in beds. There's lice/gnats. There's flies/wild animals, depending on your interpretation. Pestilence killed all of the cattle. Next was boils. Painful boils broke out. Then it was hail. Devastating storm of fire and hail destroyed many of the crops, many of the trees. Swarms of locusts devoured any vegetation that was left by the hail. And absolute darkness covered Egypt for 3 days. In the film, Moses is singing about how he loves his brother and how he regrets having to be the foe in this situation. He's full of sorrow for destroying the home that he loved. He's shouting at Rameses for all the innocents who suffer from your stubbornness and pride. But in the musical, Rameses' stubbornness feels a little different. He's being pressured by his wife, by his mother, by even the ghost of his father. It makes him feel so much more weaker and so much more trapped. He's just a man trying to be the pharaoh that his father demanded. One of the most devastating additions in the musical is when Moses goes to see his mother Tiera. It's the first time that they've seen each other in years, and she asks him, did you hate us all along because of the damage she is doing to Egypt as God's messenger? She's trying to understand how the son she loved, the one she raised with real affection, could come home as a prophet demanding Egypt's submission. Tiera feels like Moses is doing them wrong by attacking his own family's kingdom, and she's left wondering if those years of love meant nothing to him. Near the end of the plagues, and in the movie after they are over, Moses warns Rameses about what is to come, but it is no use. Moses is at his breaking point. We have not reached the 10th plague. He is screaming at God that he is done. The ensemble steps in as the voice of God once again, and they tell him that sacrifices have to be made, and there is one last plague to get through. That last plague is the death of the firstborn. Moses has to deliver the instructions for Passover, telling his people to put the blood of a lamb specifically a lamb, on the door so that the firstborns will be spared, all while knowing that this is the darkest thing that Moses is ever going to have to do. In the musical, you see the Egyptian women grieving over their babies, just silently weeping, and you see the life being taken out of one of the boys. It forces Moses, as he watches this, to sit with the horror of what he has caused. He realizes that the other plagues, they caused suffering. There is no food in Egypt, but they didn't directly harm people in any way until now. He is having a crisis of faith, sitting with the fact that as God's messenger, he's going to have to take the blame for the deaths of all of these innocent children. He's acting in the name of God, but he can't make peace with it. The lyrics here are some of the strongest in the show, in my opinion. He says, "The crimes I do them in your name, but I feel guilty all the same." He's even questioning the morality of God, asking, is your power the only reason to follow you? He's wondering why he should follow a power that would do something so awful to so many children. It's a level of nuance that shows Moses isn't a happy leader. He's a man who will be haunted by the destruction he has brought to his home for the rest of his life. And then after we see Moses sit with his grief, he goes to the palace, which leads us to the song Heartless. Moses reaches out to Rameses for comfort, but he snaps. Rameses tells Moses that he and his people can go. He lost his son, and it is just a direct hit on their family, and it finally broke him. While Rameses is processing this loss, we see Nefertiti's duty versus her guilt. Nefertiti has spent her entire life being seen as snobby or stuck up, but she reveals that her coldness was essentially a shield. She had to be that way to fulfill her duties as an Egyptian woman in power. Now, having lost the one thing that gave her a sense of purpose, her son, she is left with nothing. She realizes that she has to be the sympathetic wife for the sake of their legacy, even while her world is completely ending. It is completely over. No parent, no matter what the circumstances are, should ever have to bury their child. Nefertiti sings that all the pyramids and statues have crumbled to sand beneath the weight of your tiny silent body. It's a direct shot at the Egyptian obsession with history and monuments. None of it matters since her child is gone. Rameses tells her that they have to go to their people and reassure them that Pharaoh is still all powerful. He's focusing on the legacy and the crown while she is just trying to grieve. She has to stand by and give them both the strength to grieve, even though she's acknowledged as a cold and awful person by everyone else. In the song, she sings, "I know people call me heartless. Heartless. Oh, only if it were true. How I wish I could be heartless." This is such a powerful moment of female suffering. And it was after this song that I was really like, I really need to kind of speak on some of the women in the Prince of Egypt. Nefertiti is saying that if she were actually as cold as everyone thinks she is, her loss, her pain wouldn't hurt so much. She'd rather be a monster than feel the weight of what she's lost. She has to be the one to stand by her husband. She has to be there for him, even though she can't be that strong person anymore. It's a moment where you see the cost of a system, especially from the perspective of a woman who is required to keep it running no matter what. After all that grief, we finally get a fresh of breath air with the song When You Believe. Moses is sitting there, absolutely destroyed by the guilt of what he's done to his brother and to Egypt. Is the one who hits him with the reality check that he needs. And it's such a powerful line in the musical where she says, "One thing is true today that wasn't true yesterday. Your people are free." She's not letting him wallow in his pity and guilt. She's forcing him to see that he is their liberator. He has freed them. And she's reminding him that he has to lead them out of Egypt. The duet between Miriam and Zipporah is amazing. They are the ones who step up to remind Moses, even though he is ridden with guilt, of what has actually been achieved between his sister and his wife. And essentially more Hebrew people and the children join in singing with him. And it turns the song into this massive, cheerful celebration of their freedom. They are the ones reminding the man carrying the weight of all of that destruction that he has done exactly what God has sent him to do. When the ensemble joins in, it becomes this bold declaration of Hebrew faith when just a few songs ago, Moses was doubting. I love that Moses doesn't sing for most of the song. He's still in tears. He's still processing the cost of everything that he's done. It's only till the very end that he whispers under his breath, "You will when you believe." Before we get to the Red Sea and the replies of "never in a million years," Aaron actually steps up and talks to Moses. He asks him, "Can you forgive me? I doubted you." And Moses replies with, "No more than I doubted myself." It's a moment where they're actually on the same page, acknowledging that the path God had set them on was terrifying for everybody involved. But the heaviest part here is Zipporah. She tells Moses, "I am now a stranger in a strange land." The same line that Moses had said in Act 1 about being in Midian. Zipporah is leaving everything she knows, her father, her sisters, her home, to follow Moses into a destiny that she didn't really ask for. Even though Zipporah feels insecure and saddened, by all that she's left behind, she makes a choice to stand by him. It's a massive sacrifice of her own comfort for his mission, and it really shows how important their love is, how it's not just a fairy tale, it's a commitment that they've made to each other to move forward together even where they don't know which direction to go. The Act 2 finale brings everything together, and it again is another reprise of When You Believe and Footprints on the Sand. Before we get to Rameses and his army, we see the pressure that Rameses is under back at the palace. Hotep is right in his ear, acting as the voice of the old ways, asking Rameses the very manipulative question, do you love your brother more than Egypt? And it's clear that Rameses is being persuaded by opinions that aren't entirely his own. He's acting out of a desperate need to be the pharaoh his father demanded, even at the very end of the musical. When Moses reaches the water, he isn't alone. He gets the faith he needs from the voices of the women in his life, Zipporah, Miriam, and even the memory of his mother, before the rest of the ensemble joins in. This visual here is incredible. The ensemble acts as the sea itself, and they open up the sky and the stage as the Hebrews literally walk through the audience towards their freedom. It makes the audience feel like they are part of the story. They are part of their history. But the ending of the musical takes a huge shift from the movie. Moses stays behind with Zipporah, and Rameses and Hotep catches up with him. He offers himself up as a ransom for his own people, with Rameses hearing the ghost of his father reprise the song One Weak Link. Moses is ready to be that sacrifice if it means that his people will survive. However, Rameses chooses to spare Moses. He says that there has been too much death and that he is going to end the chain right here. He decides to be the weak link that actually changes things, breaking the generational curses that his father has left behind. Rameses says there is a way of honoring the past without being trapped by it. He chooses mercy over the crown. Instead of chasing after Moses and drowning in the sea like he does in the film, he allows himself to be weak enough to start over and have another chance. As they stand side by side, they shake each other's hand. Moses gives Rameses one final gift. While Miriam has been the one with the gift of prophecy for most of this musical, Moses realizes that he has one in that moment too. He declares that Rameses will be known as Rameses the Great, a strong ruler who will expand Egypt and its empire and build it without the use of slaves. It is a fun nod to Egyptian history and a way of giving Rameses a legacy that isn't built on blood. Everyone comes together on stage, whether they're alive or dead, to sing about how, while they will eventually die, their choices they made and the deeds they did will live on forever. The story of Moses and the Prince of Egypt is a powerful one for someone who is or isn't religious. But through every song and creative choice that was taken in the musical, we are able to see a much deeper purpose than just retelling a Bible story. The musical uses the ensemble to represent the shared pain and survival of a people. By drawing parallels to Black American spirituals and other spirituals of other people of color, the musical and the choreography turns the stage into one of rebellion, where music is the only tool for freedom when your voice is taken away. We move through Moses and Rameses being goofy, reckless brothers to two men crushed by different destinies. Their bond is the heart of the entire musical. Rameses isn't a villain by choice, but he is a man shackled by a crown that he isn't strong enough to wear without his brother by his side. Seti's one weak link metaphor haunts the entire show. It represents the toxic pressure to prioritize legacy over love. We see the cycle trap everyone, from Tiera silencing herself for duty to Nefertiti wishing she were actually heartless to survive her grief. Moses' journey from a privileged prince to a guilt-ridden prophet shows the psychological toll of advocacy. He finds his true identity, but it costs him his peace. The musical's biggest accomplishment is how it handles the finale. In a world built on traditions and blood, the ultimate act of power isn't conquering an enemy, it is choosing mercy. Rameses chooses to be the wink. Rameses chooses to be the weak. I just did it again. Weak. Rameses chooses to be the weak link in his father's eye so he can finally be a human in his own. Moses rewards this mercy by telling Rameses that he will have a legacy built on growth and an empire that isn't built on slaves. In this moment, it shows us that your destiny isn't what your father or the people before you say that it is. It is the choices that you make when you finally have the courage to stand up on your own. At the end of the day, Moses and Rameses both find exactly what they were looking for. They find their purpose, their pride, and their peace, not by following the footprints of those who came before them, but by leaving their own marks on the sands of time. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like this video. Make sure you click that notification bell so you guys know when I upload. As usual, please let me know what you think in the comments below, and always tell me what you guys want me to cover next. Make sure to keep an eye out on my community post for updates and behind the scenes looks at what I'm up to. Next up, I'm going to be covering Once on This Island. This is actually a musical I have never seen before. I've never listened to it before, so I'm going into this completely blind. If you are a member of this channel, you'll get exclusive access to my live reactions to the new Broadway cast recording, and for the very first time, you can watch me actually watch through the musical that I'm going to be watching on YouTube and really get my reactions to those like live as I'm going through it, and see me kind of take my notes as I kind of go through. So make sure you become a member to be part of that and to get early access to the final video and more. Oh, and thank you guys for 500 subscribers. I've already made a community post about this, but I'm so glad you guys are here, and I can't wait to continue making more videos with you guys and to continue to grow. That's it. I'll see you guys all in the next take. Bye-bye.